Think about it. What two reasons appear to explain why people so often mimic one another? So one is ideomotor action, which means thinking about a behavior makes doing that behavior more likely. The other one is for smooth social interaction, so you can foster social connection because people will like you if you mimic them. Suppose your dining hall is having a contest and you have to guess how many gumballs are in a giant jar. The closest guess wins. You and a few friends walk up to the gumball jar and tell your guesses to the volunteer running the contest. Your friends all say their guesses out loud, and you go last. You find yourself increasing your gumball estimate to be closer to those of your friends. How could each type of social influence, normative and informational, have affected your guess? How could you reduce the normative social influence in this situation? So normative social influence is the desire to avoid being criticized, disapproved of, or shunned. It's avoiding social sanctions like ridicule, barbs, or ostracism. So if you didn't want your friends to make fun of you by you saying like a number that seemed really wrong compared to theirs, you'd be more likely to change your number. And informational social influence is the reliance on other people's comments and actions to see who's right or effective. So you're looking to other people, their actions or their behavior to know what to do. So because you hear your friends voting out loud, you know that like their behavior and words like can know what they think the right number is, so you change that to fit accordingly. How could you reduce the normative social influence in this situation? So if you just wrote down your guess and you gave it to the guy, then since your friends wouldn't know, they couldn't make fun of you for the guess, so that would reduce it. 3. In the battle for LGBTQIA plus rights, what kind of social influence can minority LGBTQIA plus groups exert on the majority? Should their goal be to engage public support or private internalization and acceptance of their arguments among members of the majority? So minority groups exert informational social influence. They can't exert normative social influence because they are not the norm. So they exert informational social influence. Should their goal be to engage public support or private internalization and acceptance of their arguments among members of the majority? So you want to shift both. You can see in the experiment by Moscovici about the blue and green numbers when a minority of participants who are really Confederates consistently called a blue color green. Not only did it change the study participants' depiction of colors at the time, but also it changed their private understanding of which color was which. By consistently stating their minority opinion, minorities influence fewer people, but the nature of the influence is often deeper and results in true private attitude change because people question, why do they keep saying that? Suppose you want to increase voting rates among the millennial generation, people born in the 1980s and 1990s. Describe one reason-based approach, one emotion-based approach, and one norm-based approach you could use to do so. A reason-based approach would be, if I vote, will you vote? An emotion-based approach would be to ask someone to vote when they're in a good mood. A norm-based approach would be to say everyone's doing it, especially everyone cool. In the context of the Milgram experiment, give an example of tuning in the learner and an example of tuning out the experimenter, and explain how each one affects obedience rates. Okay, so tuning in the learner, so you basically want to pay attention to the guy who's getting electric shock. So the most extreme example Milgram used was when the participant had to take the experimenter's hand and put it on the shock pad. So their presence was highly, highly salient. And tuning out the experimenter would be talking to the experimenter over the phone to receive directions versus them standing over you, because the presence of the experimenter decreases, and so does their authority and power in that sense. Okay, each one lowers obedience rates, but it's more effective to tune out the authority figure to make it easier to resist than it is to tune in the experimenter or the victim to make it more desirable to resist.